trillion. I mean, it's a number with so many zeros, it's almost hard to comprehend. But at this anticipated public offering, forecasters suggesting that Elon Musk will become the very first individual in recorded human history to cross the staggering threshold. Not John D. Rockefeller, not any ancient emperor, nobody. To put that into perspective, our source material points out something wild. If you have just one single dollar in your pocket right now, you're actually closer in net worth to the second richest person on Earth than that person is to Elon Musk in this 2026 projection. Crazy, right? So that begs the question, how does the math on something like this actually work? Well, to understand this completely unprecedented level of wealth generation, we really have to trace the chronological risk and reward arc of a man who built massive companies, got fired from those same companies, and repeatedly bet absolutely everything he had on exploding rockets. It's a story of incredible leverage, crushing failures, and betting against conventional wisdom at literally every single turn. To see where this whole trillion-dollar trajectory began, we actually need to look way back to 1971. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, Musk's early life wasn't exactly what you'd call a smooth runway. He was severely bullied as a kid. At one point, he was even hospitalized for 2 weeks after a really brutal attack by some peers. And because of that, he sort of retreated inward. He dove into science fiction, books, and eventually code. He taught himself programming from a library manual, and get this, he coded his very first space shooter video game, it was called Blaster, and sold it to a tech magazine for $500. He was only 12 years old. Now think about this explosive growth rate. 2,300%. After he migrated to Canada with literally just one bag to avoid mandatory military service in South Africa's apartheid regime, he worked odd jobs, shoveling grain, cleaning boiler rooms, before finally making his way into a PhD program at Stanford. But he actually dropped out after just 2 days. Why? Well, in 1995, the internet was growing at that massive 2,300% annual rate. He looked at that data point and decided, you know what, Stanford can wait. It's honestly crazy to see how his early career was defined by this repeating pattern of building something massive and then immediately losing control of it. He started Zip2, which was essentially Google Maps before Google Maps even existed. But investors pushed him right out of the CEO role because they wanted someone with more experience. So he took his $22 million payout and immediately shoved it into an online banking startup called X.com. That eventually merged with a rival to create PayPal. And what happened next? You guessed it, he was fired as CEO again, this time while he was mid-air over the Pacific Ocean on his honeymoon. But despite being ousted, when eBay swooped in and bought PayPal in 2002 for $1.5 billion, Musk walked away with a massive fortune of roughly $180 million. At 31 years old, he easily could have just bought a private island and retired. Instead, his friends actually intervened. They made him a highlight reel of private rockets exploding specifically to talk him out of starting a space company. Well, he sat there, watched the entire video, completely ignored their warnings, and poured $100 million into a brand new rocket company called SpaceX. Oh, and he tossed millions more into a struggling electric car startup called Tesla. Part 1, 2008, the brink of collapse. Let's get into it. By 2008, the broader macroeconomy was completely collapsing. The fall of Lehman Brothers happened, credit markets totally froze up, and Musk, he was personally broke. He was literally borrowing rent money from friends and going through a really tough divorce. Meanwhile, his 2 highly speculative companies were just burning through cash. Look at how things were playing out on Omelek Island. That's a tiny coral strip in the Pacific where they were testing. They had 3 consecutive failures, a fuel leak in 2006, then ocean crashes, and finally this agonizing stage separation collision in August 2008. At that point, he had enough money for exactly one more launch. If he gave it all to SpaceX, Tesla died. If he gave it all to Tesla, SpaceX died. So he took a massive gamble. He split his remaining cash to keep both alive just long enough for one final do-or-die 4th rocket launch. And that 4th launch miraculously actually reached orbit. It became the first privately funded liquid-fueled rocket to ever pull that off. The source notes that grown engineers were literally crying in the control room. And because they succeeded, just 3 months later, NASA awarded SpaceX a massive $1.6 billion resupply contract. That single contract saved the company and proved that his insane bet had actually paid off. Moving on to part 2, revolutionizing space and auto. Surviving is great, but surviving isn't winning. With Tesla successfully launching the game-changing Model S back in 2012, Musk pivoted his attention back to SpaceX and started demanding something the entire aerospace industry thought was completely impossible. He looked at the math and realized that 70% of a rocket's cost was just being thrown away, dumped into the ocean with every single launch. So he decided he wanted to land orbital-class boosters completely upright so they could be reused. Now, demanding the impossible naturally led to a very public, highly expensive series of failures. Rockets trying to land turned into massive fireballs, boosters hit drone ships, tipped over, and exploded spectacularly. But instead of hiding from these failures, the company actually leaned into it, playfully describing the massive explosions with this specific, highly technical-sounding phrase. Yeah, rapid, unscheduled disassembly. But honestly, that humor was really just a coping mechanism, masking the immense pressure the engineering team was under. They failed publicly over and over again until they hit a historic turning point on December 21st, 2015. On that exact day, a Falcon 9 booster launched its payload, fell back through the Earth's atmosphere, deployed its landing legs, and miraculously landed completely upright on the pad. And that breakthrough? Reusability fundamentally changed aerospace economics literally overnight. Launch prices plummeted from around $150 million all the way down to $62 million, and eventually even lower. So why does this matter to us? Because this massive collapse in cost is exactly what allows SpaceX to start launching thousands of Starlink satellites. The goal? Bringing high-speed internet to anywhere you could possibly stand on Earth, effectively building a global business that traditional cable companies simply couldn't compete with. Part 3, the data and AI play. Just when it seemed like he definitively won the space race, Musk recognized that artificial intelligence was the next massive frontier. Actually, he co-founded OpenAI back in 2015 to act as a sort of counterweight against corporate monopolies. But as billions of dollars in investment rolled in over the years, he eventually lost his influence there. So what do you do when you lose your foothold in the next big tech frontier? Well, you just buy a new one. Purchasing Twitter in 2022 for $44 billion seemed incredibly impulsive to a lot of people, but it provided the exact strategic asset he was missing, a massive, real-time repository of human thought and data. And that data is the exact required training ground to feed his newly founded artificial intelligence lab, xAI, which he launched in 2023 to catch right back up in the AI race. Now, to operate these massive, futuristic systems, regulatory clearance is absolutely crucial. Whether you're trying to roll out full self-driving cars or, launch massive rockets to Mars. The source explains that to navigate these complex hurdles, Musk became highly visible in the political sphere, making a significant donation of roughly $290 million to Donald Trump's 2024 campaign. And following the election results, Wall Street rapidly priced the expectation of favorable regulatory conditions directly into the valuations of his companies. Which brings us to part 4, the trillion-dollar merger. All of these disparate threads, the rockets, the data, the AI, the surging market optimism, they all set the stage for a projected mega event in February 2026. This is when SpaceX is slated to break its 24-year streak of being a strictly private company. Now, Musk had kept it private for so long because he hates losing control, but to fund the incredibly expensive next-generation Starship project designed for Mars, he finally needs public market money. But here's the twist. Instead of taking just one company public, he rolls the rocket company, the AI lab, and the social media platform all into one giant mega entity. Why? Because AI data centers require immense amounts of electricity and cooling, which eventually makes Earth's power grids a major bottleneck. His integrated solution? Put those massive AI data centers directly into orbit. SpaceX launches them, Starlink connects them, xAI runs on them, and X feeds them real-time human data. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. When you look at this whole combined package, sure, skeptics might just call it 3 expensive dreams duct taped to a rocket. But according to this 2026 projection, Wall Street completely buys into the vision. They end up valuing the combined SpaceX initial public offering at an unprecedented $1.77 trillion, making it the largest IPO in recorded history, with shares opening at $135 each. On its very first day of public trading, the stock climbs past a $2 trillion market cap, triggering a notification on the Bloomberg Index that makes Musk human history's first official trillionaire. But you know what the most fascinating part of this whole projection is? He isn't standing at the NASDAQ ringing the victory bell. He's down at Starbase in South Texas, working on the next launch. He managed to turn a $500 childhood space game into a $1 trillion empire. But all of this leaves us with one incredibly provocative question. Is $1 trillion actually enough to buy a ticket to Mars?